Third point, quality control and logistics. And I just want to walk you briefly through what's important when it comes to quality control, what you should really look out for, what you should do, and especially how you should set up logistics so that everything runs as quickly and cost effectively as possible. We also have a small case study on quality control, which I hope will give you a bit of extra insight. So quality control, what is it really about? Well, quite simply, it's about making sure that the products you found from a manufacturer, where you might have 2, 3, or 4 options for samples, are actually meeting your standards. You want to take a close look at those samples. And later, once you've chosen your manufacturer, one of the most important things is that during mass production, you continue to check and make sure that the quality is really right and that everything is as it should be. Now, one of the most important points when working with a manufacturer or with us as a sourcing company that helps you find manufacturers, whether in China, Europe, Germany, the US, or anywhere else, is to very clearly define what the product should look like and how it should be made. Which certifications should it have, what colors, shapes, finishes, dimensions, and so on, and also what must not happen. Maybe you've already had some experiences in the past producing this product or something similar where there were problems with the finishing, with the packaging, with shipping, with logistics, with storage, or with temperature changes from hot to cold during transport. There are so many possible issues, so define the product as precisely as possible. Of course, all the post-processing is another topic, but what's far more important from the beginning is to say what dimensions, what size, what color, what shape, and to really pay attention to the quality. For example, no sharp edges so that a wallet doesn't tear a trouser pocket. That's actually something from our own past experience. And of course, which certificates and regulations have to be met or which ones still need to be obtained and whether those can be confirmed later by the testing institutes. The key point here is define everything as precisely as you can. That helps you during your search and in your communication with the manufacturer to very quickly figure out which supplier is actually able to meet those requirements. It also means you've already thought through the product carefully and know in advance where problems might arise and how to prevent them from the start. And it also helps us if we're doing the search for you because we can immediately filter out unsuitable suppliers. We don't waste time with manufacturers who can't meet the requirements and instead focus only on those who really can. And make sure to write down with the manufacturers what you want your product to be like. Put it in the order, put it in the quotation. A little tip here, well, actually a big tip because people ask us this all the time. How do I actually make sure the manufacturer puts this in writing? If you're sourcing through Alibaba or in China, make sure that the manufacturer includes your requirements directly in their quotation, or that it at least says quotation based on meeting the requirements of this document or something like that. It's very important to have that written down so that later you can say, look, here it is in writing. And of course, it also helps if you have it in emails, not just contracts. People talk a lot on the phone or nowadays through voice messages. But please, for important points like this, always confirm them in writing. Another point, if deadlines are really critical, you don't necessarily want to start out by putting penalty clauses into a contract with a new supplier, because if you do that right at the beginning, the manufacturer might think, why should I work with you if you're already causing trouble? But later, after several production cycles, and mistakes will happen, that's normal, if you notice recurring issues, then you can add clauses. For example, in the contract or in the quality control agreement that say production must be completed within 25 to 35 days. Shipping is another issue, but if delays keep happening, then you can say any delay will be penalized by X% of the order value per day, per week, or per month. That's definitely possible. And in general, many of these things are simply a matter of negotiation. Another tip you can take with you. When you're sourcing products in China or outside of the EU and you're working with a sourcing partner, whether with us or someone else, make sure you do the first check of the samples right there locally. For example, our team in China can look at the samples straight away. Why? Because if you order samples from multiple manufacturers, they need to be consolidated and shipped together, and that can mean waiting for the packages to come from different factories, then shipping them internationally, paying the high freight costs, and on top of that, dealing with customs delays, which are very common right now. Sometimes imports slip through quickly, but often there are big delays. By testing the samples right there in China or elsewhere outside the EU, you can save 2 to 3 weeks of time, which is incredibly valuable. Because imagine getting your samples after 3 weeks only to realize sample 1 isn't good, sample 2 is okay, sample 3 is maybe all right, or worst case, none of them are usable and you need to find new manufacturers. Then you've lost weeks unnecessarily. Inside the EU, it's a different story because shipping is quick and there's no import process that adds delays. So then it makes sense to have the samples sent directly. Let me share a quick case study. One of our clients told us his story. This was before he started working with us, and it cost him $100,000. He had found a few manufacturers, ordered samples, received them, checked them, and thought they were great. So he gave the green light for mass production. The products were produced, packed, shipped in a container, and sent by sea freight to Germany. When the container arrived and he opened it, he realized the products didn't look like the samples. They were similar, but not the same as what he had approved. His mistake was simple. He hadn't done quality control during mass production. He had trusted that because the manufacturer could make good samples, they would produce good mass production. But in reality, the factory probably got the samples from somewhere else and then delivered something different. And now what? Suing a manufacturer in China is nearly impossible. Often, by the time you realize there's a problem, the company doesn't even exist anymore. And he already had the products in Germany, imported with all the paperwork done. Returning them would have been a nightmare, and the manufacturer certainly wasn't going to reproduce the goods for free. That was a very expensive lesson for him. Our advice to him and to all of you is, invest the few $100s in a quality inspection during mass production. It's worth it to avoid exactly this kind of disaster. Now let's talk logistics. Once your products are finished, how do you get them to your market? If it's urgent and smaller volumes, air freight is the fastest, but also the most expensive. Sea freight takes the longest, but is usually the cheapest. Rail freight from Asia is now a very real option as well, faster than sea and often cheaper than air. And of course, if you're producing within Europe, then it goes by road freight, which means loading onto a truck and having it arrive within a couple of days. It always comes down to weighing cost against time, especially when it comes to imports. And here it's really important to understand your Incoterms. Is the offer EXW, FOB, or DDP? Because that makes a huge difference. With EXW, shipping isn't included at all. With FOB, costs are covered up until the goods are on board the ship. With DDP, the supplier handles nearly everything, so you need to know exactly what's included. And also, keep in mind, you as the importer are responsible for making sure the import is correct, that customs clearance is done properly, and that the right tariff codes are declared. You can even look this up online with the Electronic Customs Tariff Database to see which product categories apply, what duty rates apply, and so on. VAT is straightforward, usually 19%, but tariffs can vary a lot. And if customs finds a wrong declaration or a wrong value, it's you who will be held accountable, not the freight forwarder, not the supplier, because You're the importer of record. That's why it's so important to double check everything, the HS codes, the product categories, and the Incoterms. And if in doubt, you can even get a binding customs ruling or just call customs directly. They're usually very helpful. And with that, we arrive at the next big topic, imports and the next steps.